Hello and welcome back to the BC Automotive channel. We appreciate you checking out our videos. If you found something useful in any of these, please consider helping us out, get a little more exposure. Click like, subscribe, and if you have comments, that's what the space is there for. We love answering questions, and that's pretty much what I do all day long, is answer people's questions and try to help them get their vehicles in a better place than they were. So what we're talking about today is how basic maintenance of, we're going to take one thing in particular, in this case it's battery maintenance, how basic maintenance, if neglected, can turn a small thing into a much bigger thing. And the purpose of this video is just to point that out. Most of you probably don't ever open your hoods. I know lots of people that don't even put washer fluid in their cars. It is what it is. We're not judging, but maintenance, people used to do a lot more maintenance on their cars, and today they really don't. It's just a product of our times and the way the vehicles are made. This gentleman's truck is a good example. He's a hard-working, busy guy, and he doesn't work on cars. The truck is a tool, and things can get overlooked, and things that get overlooked for days or weeks all of a sudden are overlooked for years. The example we're going to use today is battery maintenance. Most of the time, people will see, if you're looking at batteries or you're going to replace a battery, you'll see the words maintenance free. It's kind of a misnomer. It's like it's a phrase that somebody made up one time to sell batteries. It's like all-season tires. There really are no all-season tires. There's tires that are made for different seasons. There really is no such thing as a maintenance-free battery. There really is no such thing as a maintenance-free anything. You have to take care of it. Basically, the battery maintenance today is just cleaning, keeping it clean and neutralized, so that you don't have corrosion or battery leakage. And if you want to kind of get a little closer on this, you can see this vehicle is not even here for battery maintenance or anything related to the battery. But this is what we found. The vehicle was on a lift for a couple days waiting on parts, and the battery went dead. As we investigated it, this is the science experiment we found. We'll pan over and do the other one there. So, let me back off a little. You can see this battery hold down is not really installed properly. Haven't investigated that yet. It's loose, it's out of position. Back off a little. The negative terminal looks pretty good, other than the corrosion, but the positive is a complete science experiment right now. So we wound up having to jump start this vehicle, and as soon as you move it, you can see that this is no longer secure. So we have a real problem here with this battery terminal. Back off on me again. The point here is, if this had just been cleaned once in a while, this could have been avoided. I don't know what's available for this terminal yet. That's part of what we're going to look into this morning. It could very well be replacing a section of the engine wiring harness, which, depending on the design, it's a possibility. Some vehicles are put together that way. That's a problem that could have been avoided. So the purpose of me speaking today is just to show you what happens if you ignore and neglect. This is not to say every battery and every vehicle is going to do this, but this is what can happen if it's let go for a long time. This battery is probably going to have to be replaced as well. I can't really even connect to it to test it, but that's a big unknown. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to apply some battery cleaner, and this is going to neutralize some of the acids and cut some of that corrosion away. When you're cleaning a battery, you don't want to use compressed air. It can act like a siphon and draw the electrolyte out of the battery, which is acid, and get it on other things. We don't want to do that. Some people want to like rinse it down and blow it off. Some people use baking soda and water. That's fine. That's totally fine. You can take a box of baking soda and sprinkle it on there. Let it sit for a few minutes, a little water on it. They like a plastic brush or something. Today we're just going to use this battery cleaner. This stuff is pretty good, and I found that it works fairly well. So we're going to go with that, and then we'll test it and we'll see how bad our terminal really is. What we're going to do is we're going to apply this product You can see it actually kind of fizzles and foams. There's a whole lot of chemical reaction going on there. The science teachers want to back off a little just so we don't get any of this on our phone that we have to use on a daily basis. So we're going to coat this all pretty good here. This has an acid indicator, this particular product, which is what the yellow foam turns red in the presence of the battery acid. So you can see there's a lot of red there. It's just an indication of how nasty this battery was leaking. Some of that's natural, and some of it is just made worse and compounded by the fact that the battery was not maintained. You can do this yourself, or you can have a shop do it. It's really not a very complicated process. If you're doing it at home, I mean, obviously I have quick access to being able to clean up. You want to wear gloves, you want to wear eye protection. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for a few minutes and let the product do its job, and then we'll rinse it off and we'll see what we have. Okay, so we've reapplied a little more off camera. I sprayed it on mostly on that positive terminal quite a bit to try and break down as much of that corrosion as I can. I found that leaving it on there for a whole lot longer, it really doesn't do much good. So we're going to give it a rinse and we'll see what we find. As far as like spraying it with the hose, you can do that. I don't really see the reason to. I just kind of like to pour the water over it. We don't need to spread all of this in multiple directions. We just kind of flood it. If we just flood it with nice, fresh, clear water, the surrounding area here, and it gives us a much better picture. Now obviously there's still corrosion in there. Obviously it's still compromised because it's not tight anymore, and this is part of why maintenance is important. You can see that this terminal is not just a regular battery terminal. If you look at this side, the negative, this is just a terminal. If this were corroded, we could cut the wire, there'd be a little excess here, and we could shorten it just a hair and put a new terminal. Even a cheap repair terminal would be better than this corroded mess over here. Switch over. In this case, this has fuse holders built into it. I believe there's a couple of fuses in there. A lot of these are way more complicated than this one even. You can see where the cables connect to it. This is not just a cheap battery terminal. This part of it right here may be replaceable. I'm hoping we can get this because for us to have to replace this here, one, I don't know how available it is. Two, it's going to be probably pretty pricey. So it's going to be back to the parts catalog and making a phone call to the dealer and our local parts suppliers to see what's available for this and how we can repair it, because clearly something's got to be done there. This is so eaten away that I don't think that's ever going to tighten up again. They don't just loosen up on their own, so the fact that it's loose now tells me that it's degraded pretty badly. Hi. This is my son James. He's helping me film today, learning a little bit. Got to maintain the flow. Learn a little bit about auto maintenance. We got a couple of things to work on today. We got some Subaru, we got some Nissan, we got Chevy, we got some, there's really no shortage of work to choose from. A lot of stuff going on in the shop. So anytime you're going to do battery service, go ahead and show them down here too. You want to disconnect, obviously, you're going to disconnect the battery. You want to disconnect the negative terminal first. Does this make a big difference electrically? No, it does not. The difference is negative is ground. So once it's connected to the ground cable, the negative terminal and anything on the vehicle that's ground, the chassis, the body, the engine, it's all the same as far as electricity goes. So if I create a short circuit like this, it's not going to do anything because it's all the same anyway. Now if I did the same thing on the positive side and I touch the positive terminal and anything ground, we're going to create an arc, and it's going to turn the tool or a ring that you might have on your finger, which you shouldn't when you're working on a car, it's going to turn that into a conductor, and you're going to go to the hospital. So we disconnect the negative first because it's very low risk. There's almost no way that there can be some kind of a short circuit or an arc. Now the circuit is interrupted and the positive terminal would be considered safe. So what we're going to try to do is see if we can separate this. And as you can see how thin this was, it's basically paper at this point. So that's what we're left with after years of corrosion eating into it. So I'm not quite certain if this piece is serviceable, or if it was serviceable, if it's serviceable anymore. I don't know. It doesn't want to come apart by hand, that's for certain. Well, we're going to have to see if we can grab that with something and hold it steady. What I want to do is take this nut off and see if this terminal slides out of there, if there's some part of it that we can replace without replacing the whole thing. All right, so we were able to, well, we got lucky. This all kind of happened right before it was going to get really bad. If you want to show the folks, we were able to get this piece of terminal separated from the main part. And this is, as you can see, there's multiple fuses in here. There's a couple of different terminals that attach to it. So this is actually a good design where a lot of this is probably available separately, including this. I couldn't get this exact one today, but we had a couple options. A lot of times if you're in a bind, you can use something like a marine battery terminal. If we had to, we could have modified this a little bit and made it work. We were able to find this from one of our local parts houses. It's just a generic battery lug. That's the same kind of a shape. It's inexpensive. There's not really much to it, but I think it'll do just fine. I think it's going to be about 1,000,000 times better than what was on there. I just had to trim the edges of this, just change its shape just a little bit, and it's going to mount right in here. I got a lot of this corrosion scraped and rinsed off of here. It still looks a little funky, but it's definitely going to be discolored. But this should, we'll tighten that up. We'll drop the battery in here and we'll show you what it looks like all reconnected. You can see we've got the area of the battery tray all cleaned out. We've got our hold downs cleaned up so that the hardware will actually go on, and we can actually hook these in. These are, if you're doing one at home, you can see this very basic hold down. A lot of generic ones are like this. These just hook into the battery tray like that, and then the bracket goes across the top and holds the battery down. It's very important that that battery hold down be there. The battery hold down is something that a lot of people who are doing a job like this at home overlook. It doesn't come apart right, something breaks, and it never goes back in. We see them all the time where they're missing. This other car right here is missing one. That battery, you want it to stay where it is. The vibrations are going to shorten its life. They're going to weaken the cables and the connections. Something can ground out on any part of the body. You really don't need that kind of aggravation. So a couple extra minutes of making sure the hold down goes back together the way it's supposed to be really pays off. And a lot of times if something is broken, you can replace it with a piece out of like a generic battery hold down kit. For this style battery hold down, that's definitely the case. You can get this stuff at any auto parts store. Okay, so we've got our terminal repaired and installed. We got our new battery installed. The battery did not pass the test. I know we didn't do that on camera, but it did not pass any kind of test. It did not want to take a charge. It only registered like 74 cold cranking amps. He was going nowhere with that battery. There was no point in trying to charge it and reuse it. So come on in. You can take a look at our lug that we installed. Came out pretty good. Other one cleaned up. We got the hold down properly installed. And the only last thing we're going to do here is we're going to apply, this is just one of many different products you can use. We want to put a little coating on these terminals. It doesn't have to be a lot of it. It doesn't have to be anything specific. Back up to me. The old timer trick for this was wheel bearing grease. They used to just put wheel bearing grease on there before they had stuff that was specifically made for this. When they did a battery, you see old cars, some guys still do it. That they have it just looks like a big pile. They'll literally take a handful of wheel bearing grease and plop it on that terminal. Is that what it was made for? No. It really made a big mess, but it worked. It kept the oxygen off of the lead, which kept it from oxidizing and kept it from reacting with the other chemicals that are naturally on the top of a battery. So in this case, we're just going to use this. It's an inexpensive product, and you could even, there's other things you could use, but we're going to use this. It's just going to coat the metal, keep it from oxidizing, and that should keep it in much better condition going forward. So that's what we got. That job is completed, and what I hope that you get from this is that this is one that could have been avoided. The battery was a few years old and it probably needed to be replaced anyway. That would have been it. That would have been the whole job. We wound up getting lucky that we could get a part that would work on short notice on a Saturday. but that's not always the case. And we do run into these where that terminal, that lug is not available separately, and you wind up buying a battery cable, depending on what it consists of. I've got some Kia ones in mind that I can remember doing, that it turns it into a $400 or $500 job. And all you really had to do was keep that clean. Even if you look at it once a year and neutralize the acids and keep it clean and protected, it's going to make a big difference. This gentleman, like I said, nothing against him. He's a hard-working guy. He keeps very busy. Even the hood hinges on this are stuck and corroded because there's not a whole lot of maintenance getting done. This is the kind of thing that could have been avoided very simply and for almost no cost. So I hope you got something out of that. Thank you very much for checking out our channel. Have a good one.